The air on Xylos tasted like metal and sugar. June stood on the polished landing platform, his small travel bag slung over his shoulder, and tried not to gawk. Around him, the city of Xylos Prime rose in impossible curves of crystal and light. Buildings spiraled into a lavender sky, connected by glowing bridges where beings of all shapes and sizes moved with quiet purpose. Starships, silent and sleek, glided between the spires. It was beautiful, and it made him feel incredibly small. June was an engineer from Busan. He was good with machines, with understanding how things fit together. But here, nothing made sense in a way he could grasp. He was just a tourist, one of the first waves of humans allowed into the core worlds of the galactic commons. The other species, especially the tall, elegant Xylosians with their pearlescent skin and calm eyes, were polite. But their politeness felt like a wall. They saw humans as newcomers, children stumbling into a room full of adults. He followed the directions on his data slate to the tourist lodge. It was clean and efficient, but it was clearly built for off-worlders. The walls were a dull gray, unlike the living, light-pulsing walls of the Xylosian structures. He dropped his bag and decided to join the first tour he could find. Maybe a guide could help the city feel less overwhelming. The tour group gathered at the base of the Imperial Palace. It was a mix of species, a hulking, rock-like trog, a pair of feathered avians who chittered softly, and a few other humans who looked as lost as June felt. Their guide was a Xylosian named Elian. His voice was melodious, but it carried a tone of bored repetition. "The Imperial Palace has stood for 10,000 cycles," Elian said, leading them through a grand archway that shimmered like a heat haze. "It is the heart of our civilization, a testament to the harmony and stability of the Xylosian people." June listened, his eyes tracing the lines of the architecture. He saw no bolts, no seams, no wiring. It was as if the entire palace had been grown, not built. He itched to know how it worked, what principles of physics it defied. But the tour was not for that. It was for looking, not for touching. They moved through vast halls where light danced on walls and past chambers where Xylosian officials moved with serene efficiency. Everything was perfect, quiet, and orderly. It was impressive, but it also felt a little cold. It lacked the chaotic, vibrant energy of a market in Busan or the sound of the sea. Then they entered the courtyard of echoes. It was a sudden pocket of tranquility. The noisy hum of the city faded away. In the center of the open-air courtyard was a fountain. It was not like any fountain June had ever seen. It was a single, seamless piece of milky crystal, shaped like a blooming flower. From its center, water, or what looked like water, leaped into the air. But this water shimmered with an internal light, each droplet catching the sun and holding it, glowing with a soft, silver-blue radiance. The pool it fell into was perfectly clear, yet the light pulsed from its depths like a slow, steady heartbeat. Around the base of the fountain, intricate symbols were carved. They were graceful and flowing, but completely alien. They seemed to tell a story June could not read. Elian's voice took on a more serious tone. The board edge was gone, replaced by a note of deep respect. "This is the font of origin," he announced. "It is the most sacred site in our empire. It is said that the first life of Xylos drank from these waters. It is the wellspring of our world's soul." The group murmured in awe. The trog bowed its rocky head. The avians fell silent. "The waters are a sacred trust," Elian continued, his eyes scanning the group, lingering for a moment on the humans. "They are for the world's soul and the imperial line alone. It is the first and most important law of this place. Do not touch the waters of Genesis. They are not for off-worlders. To do so is a profound violation." The warning was clear and firm. June saw the other tourists instinctively take a step back from the fountain's edge. He did too, but his curiosity, the same curiosity that made him a good engineer, was burning inside him. The water was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It wasn't just water. It was alive. He could feel it, a low hum in his teeth, a pull in his chest. The Xylosians had everything. This amazing technology, this vast empire, this perfect city. And they kept this one, most beautiful thing entirely for themselves. The warning, while polite, felt like another reminder of his place. An outsider, not worthy. The tour moved on. Elian began speaking about the architectural significance of the courtyard's acoustic properties. The group followed, their backs to the fountain. June did not follow. He lingered, pretending to examine the carvings on a nearby bench. His mouth was dry, The air on Xylos was thin and parching. He had finished his water bottle hours ago. The glowing water in the fountain looked cooler and more refreshing than anything he could imagine. His mind raced. It was just water. How could water be sacred? What could possibly happen? Would an alarm sound? Would guards suddenly appear? It seemed like a silly, superstitious rule. A rule made to keep people like him in their place. He looked around. The courtyard was empty now except for him. Elian's voice was fading into the distance as the group turned a corner. This was his only chance. It was a stupid, reckless impulse. He knew it was. But the pull was too strong. It was a mix of thirst, defiance, and that deep human need to touch the untouchable, to know the unknown. His heart hammered against his ribs. He took one last quick look around. No one. He stepped quickly to the edge of the fountain. The light from the water danced on his face. The hum was louder here, a vibration he could feel in his bones. It smelled like ozone after a storm and fresh, wet earth. He knelt down. He reached out a slightly trembling hand. The Xylosian warning echoed in his mind, but it was a distant voice, drowned out by the thrumming of his own blood. He wasn't going to bathe in it. He wasn't going to fill his bottle. He was just going to have a taste. A single sip. What was the harm in a single sip? He cupped his hands and dipped them into the pool. The moment his skin made contact with the water, a jolt of energy, warm and electric, shot up his arm. It wasn't painful. It was awakening. The water in his palms glowed brighter, the light clinging to his skin. He brought his hands to his lips and drank. The water was cold and sweet, sweeter than any fruit, and it filled him with an immediate sense of profound well-being. Every ache from his travels vanished. The dry feeling in his throat was gone. He felt more alert, more alive than he ever had in his entire life. For a second, he just sat there on his heels, feeling the energy coursing through him. He had done it. He had broken their silly rule, and it was glorious. Then panic replaced the euphoria. What had he done? He shook the remaining water from his hands, the glowing droplets sizzling as they hit the crystal pavement and faded. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his wet hands on his pants. He half expected a siren to blare for Elian to come running back, his face a mask of fury. But nothing happened. The courtyard was just as quiet and peaceful as before. The fountain continued to splash and glow undisturbed. The only sound was the frantic beating of his own heart. He had gotten away with it. He let out a shaky breath, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. It was just water. A special, glowing, incredibly good-tasting water, but still just water. All that drama for nothing. He felt a surge of relief mixed with a little pride. He, June from Busan, had drunk from the Xylosians' most sacred fountain. He quickly walked away, hurrying to catch up with the tour group. He fell in at the back, trying to look casual. No one looked back at him. No one suspected a thing. He was just another tourist in the crowd. For the rest of the tour, he felt fine. Better than fine, actually. He felt incredible. His senses seemed sharper. The colors of the palace were more vibrant. He could hear the faint, almost musical hum of the city's energy grid. He felt connected to everything, a part of the machine. That night, back in his small gray room at the lodge, the feeling began to change. The heightened senses didn't fade. They intensified. The hum of the city wasn't a distant sound anymore. It was a pressure in his skull. He could feel the deep, slow grind of the planet's rotation, a dizzying sensation that made the floor feel unsteady. Lying in bed, he felt the immense weight of the entire world beneath him, a living, breathing entity. He was drifting into a troubled sleep when the voice came. It didn't come from his ears. It resonated in the center of his mind, vast and ancient, like the sound of a mountain forming or an ocean trench groaning. It was the same voice he had felt at the fountain, but now it formed words, clear and terrifying. You have no idea what you just became. June's eyes snapped open in the dark. He was alone. The voice was inside him, and he knew with a cold, sinking certainty that the Xylosian's warning had not been superstition at all. He had done something much, much worse than breaking a rule. He had started something he could not possibly understand. The voice was not a sound. It was a presence. It filled the silence of the room not by making noise, but by replacing the silence itself. June sat bolt upright in his bed, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The sheets were tangled around his legs, damp with cold sweat. He stared into the darkness of his small room. his eyes wide, searching for a source. There was none. You have no idea what you just became. The words echoed not in the air, but in the marrow of his bones, in the pathways of his nerves. It was the same feeling he had felt at the fountain, ancient, immense, and utterly alien. "Who's there?" he whispered into the dark. His voice was a dry, cracked thing. The only answer was the low, persistent hum of the city, which now felt like it was coming from inside his own head. He scrambled out of bed, turning on the light. The sudden brightness made him wince. The room was empty. He checked the small bathroom, the closet. Nothing. He was alone. He pressed his palms against his temples, trying to push the voice out. It was like trying to hold back the ocean with his hands. "Calm yourself, little one. Panic will not unmake the bond." The voice was not unkind. It was patient, like a mountain speaking to a mayfly, but its sheer scale was terrifying. June slid down the wall to the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. He was shaking. "What are you?" he asked, the words trembling out of him. "What bond? What did I do?" "You drank from my heart." An image flashed in June's mind, vivid and overwhelming. It was not a memory of his own. He saw the courtyard of echoes from a perspective high above, as if he were the sky itself. He saw his own small, foolish form kneeling by the fountain, saw himself cup the glowing water and bring it to his lips. The act looked both insignificant and monumentally important. "The fountain," June breathed, understanding dawning with a wave of nausea. The guide said. He said it was sacred. He told us not to touch it. His words were truth. The font of origin is not a relic. It is an interface, a conduit to me, to you. "Who are you?" June asked again, his voice desperate. "I am the sum of this world, the breath in its winds, the fire in its core, the memory in its stones. Your people would call me a planetary consciousness. The Xylosians call me Kalen." June felt the truth of it settle over him, a weight that threatened to crush him. He hadn't just broken a rule. He hadn't just been disrespectful. He had plugged himself into the soul of an entire planet. The sacred waters were a direct link, a communion meant for the rulers of this civilization, and he, a tourist, had taken a sip. "Why me?" he whispered, his face buried in his knees. "Why did you let me?" "I do not let or forbid. The font is a door. You opened it. Your species. You are new. Your resonance is unpredictable. A Xylosian approaches with ritual and reverence. You approached with a thirst. A raw, simple need. The bond formed before either of us could understand what was happening. So, what does that mean?" "What am I now?" June asked, the question he had been dreading. "You are the regent, a temporary steward, a keeper of the key." The words meant nothing to him. "A regent? I'm an engineer from Busan. I fix broken machines. I can't steward a planet. The title is less important than the connection." "You feel the city's energy, do you not?" June did. He could feel the flow of power through lines beneath the city streets. A map of light and energy etched into his mind. He could feel the slow, deep pulse of life from the parks, the concentrated buzz of power from the palace. "It's in my head," he said, his voice tight with fear. "Make it stop. I cannot. The bond is made. You are now a part of this world's functioning. Your life force is tied to its well-being. If you were to die far from here, the shock would be significant for both of us." A new, deeper terror seized June. He was a prisoner. His life was now leashed to this alien world. He wasn't just a tourist who had made a mistake. He was a vital component in a system he didn't understand. "What do I do?" he asked, the question a plea. "For now, you survive. The Xylosian Imperial Guard will have detected the activation of the font by an unauthorized off-world biosignature. They will be searching for you." As if summoned by the voice, a sharp wailing sound cut through the night. It was an alarm, unlike any emergency siren on Earth. It was a high, piercing chime that resonated with the energy lines June could feel. It was a sound of violation, of panic. Red light flashed past his window, painting the walls in pulses of crimson. They were coming for him. He crawled to the window and peered through a small gap in the blinds. Below, in the streets, sleek silver skimmers with glowing red beacons were landing. Tall, armored Xylosian guards were moving with purpose, their serene grace replaced by a lethal efficiency. They were scanning the area, holding devices that glowed with the same light as the fountain. He was their target. Not a trespasser, but a defiler, a thief who had stolen their world's soul. You must move. They will check all off-worlder lodgings first. June's mind, trained for solving practical problems, kicked into gear despite the fear. He couldn't stay here. He had to get out, get lost in the city. But where could he go? He knew no one. He was alone on an entire planet that now saw him as an enemy. He grabbed his small travel bag. He shoved his data slate and a few basic items inside. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely zip it shut. The voice of Kalen was a constant low hum in his mind, a reminder of the immense burden he now carried. He cracked open his door. The hallway was empty, but he could hear the sounds of doors being knocked on further down the hall, the polite but firm questions of the guards. They were close. Instead of heading for the main entrance, he turned and ran in the opposite direction, toward the service stairs. His heart was a drum in his ears, almost drowning out Kalen's presence. He burst through the stairwell door and took the steps 2 at a time, going down, always down. The lower levels, the undercity, it is where the machinery of the city lives. Your kind of place. The thought wasn't his own, but it felt right. He was an engineer. If he was going to hide, it would be in the guts of the machine, not its polished surface. He emerged from the stairwell into a dimly lit service corridor. The walls here were not glowing crystal, but dull gray metal. Conduits and pipes ran along the ceiling, humming with power and fluids. It smelled of ozone and lubricant. This was a place he could understand. He moved quickly, his footsteps echoing on the gridded floor. He had no plan, no destination. He just had to get away. After what felt like an hour of running and hiding, his lungs burning, he found a quiet alcove behind a large, thrumming power converter. He slid into the shadows, pulling his knees up, trying to make himself as small as possible. The alarm was a distant echo down here, but he could still feel the search, a prickling sensation on his skin like a radar sweep. He was trapped. He was connected to a world that wanted him captured or dead. He had a planetary consciousness living in his head, and he was completely, utterly alone. You are not alone, Kalen's voice murmured in his mind, a strange attempt at comfort. You have me. That's what I'm afraid of, June whispered into the darkness, the truth of his situation finally crashing down on him. He had sipped from a fountain to quench a simple thirst. In doing so, he had drunk a world, and the world had drunk him. And there was no way to spit it out. The hum of the power converter was a physical thing, vibrating through the metal floor and into June's bones. It was a steady industrial sound, so different from the gentle hum of the city above. Here in the underlevels, everything was exposed. Wires, pipes, and conduits snaked along the walls and ceiling, carrying the lifeblood of the glittering capital above. This was the reality behind the illusion. This was a machine, and June understood machines. He huddled in his hiding spot, his breathing slowly returning to normal. The initial blind panic was fading, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fear in his stomach. He was a fugitive. The memory of the Xylosian guards, their graceful forms now moving with lethal purpose, was seared into his mind. They are persistent. Kalen's voice resonated in his thoughts. They search the upper residential sectors. Their scans are tuned to your unique energy signature. The bond you share with me is like a beacon to them. A beacon? June whispered, his voice hoarse. So there's nowhere to hide? Not forever. Not from a focused search. The energy of this machinery provides some cover, like trying to see a single star in the light of a sun. But it will not last. June pressed the heels of his hands against his closed eyes. He had to think. He couldn't run blindly. He needed a plan. He needed information. He needed to get off this planet. But Kalen had said that breaking the bond by leaving could be catastrophic. He was stuck. His data slate was his only link to the outside world. He pulled it from his bag, its screen glowing softly in the dim light. He opened a search function, his fingers trembling as he typed. He needed to find other humans. There had to be an Earth embassy, a trade delegation, something. The galactic network on Xylos was heavily filtered. His tourist access was limited. He found a directory for off-world commerce and residency. It was a long list of strange, clicking names and corporate symbols he didn't recognize. He scrolled, his hope fading. Then near the bottom he saw it. A simple entry. Busan Mechanical and Repair, Terran Specialists. His heart leapt. It was a human business. A Korean one from the sound of it. It was an address, a location in a sector called the Crossroads, which his map indicated was a non-citizen commercial district on the edge of the city's main levels. It was a risk. A huge one. The Xylosians would be watching all human contacts, but what other choice did he have? He couldn't stay in this alcove until he starved. The crossroads is a place of many signals, Kalen observed. Many lives. It may provide the confusion you need. It was the closest thing to encouragement he was going to get. June took a deep breath, stuffed the data slate back in his bag, and peered out from his hiding spot. The corridor was clear. Using his innate engineer's sense of direction and the new, fuzzy awareness of the city's layout from his bond with Kalen, he started moving. The journey was a nightmare of shadows and sudden noises. He moved through maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts, always staying low, always listening. Twice he had to freeze as patrols of Xylosian guards passed by, their polished armor reflecting the dim light. They moved with an eerie silence, their scanners sweeping the area. Each time June held his breath, praying the machinery around him would mask his presence. After what felt like hours, he found a service lift that took him up to the crossroads. The change was immediate. The sterile, quiet order of the main Xylosian sectors was gone. Here the air was thick with the smells of cooking food from a dozen different worlds, recycled air and engine grease. The architecture was a messy jumble, with makeshift stalls and permanent shops built right up against the elegant Xylosian structures. Beings of all kinds jostled in the crowded streets. It was loud, chaotic, and for the first time since he'd arrived on Xylos, it felt a little bit like home. He navigated the crowded streets, keeping his head down. The address led him to a narrow alley off the main thoroughfare. The sign was small and hand-painted in both Galactic Standard and Hangul, Busan Mechanical and Repair. Below it, in smaller letters, it said, "If it's broken, we can fix it." The shop was tucked between a vendor selling glowing fungi and a noisy bar filled with large-scaled aliens. It looked sturdy and real. June hesitated at the door. What was he going to say? "Hello. I accidentally bonded with the planet and now the government wants to arrest me. Can you help?" He had no other options. He pushed the door open. A bell chimed, a simple physical sound that was strangely comforting. The inside of the shop was a beautiful mess. Shelves were crammed with parts from 100 different technologies, sparking crystals next to old-fashioned Terran circuit boards, spools of glowing wire next to simple copper cable. The air smelled of solder and ozone. A woman was bent over a workbench, her back to him, using a plasma torch on a piece of twisted metal. She wore stained coveralls and her black hair was tied back in a messy bun. She didn't turn around. "If you're selling, I'm not buying. If you're here to complain about a repair, check the ticket. If you're lost, the main street is that way." Her voice was sharp, no nonsense, and spoke Korean with a Busan accent that made June's heart ache with homesickness. I need help," June said, his voice barely a whisper. The woman shut off the plasma torch with a hiss and finally turned around. She looked to be in her late 20s. She had a smudge of grease on her cheek and a pair of magnifying lenses pushed up on her forehead. Her eyes were dark and intelligent, and they sized June up in a single sweeping glance. He knew he looked terrible, pale, sweating, his clothes rumpled from hiding in maintenance shafts. "You and everyone else," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. "What's broken?" June just stood there, his mouth opening and closing. How could he possibly explain? "Tell her," Kalen's voice urged gently in his mind. There is no more time for caution. Before he could form a sentence, the shop window suddenly flashed with a piercing red light. The same alarm siren from the lodge, now much closer, wailed through the walls of the shop. Outside, they could hear the shouts of beings scattering and the low hum of Xylosian skimmers landing. The woman's eyes snapped to the window, then back to June. The casual annoyance on her face vanished, replaced by a hard, calculating look. "They're here for you," she stated. It wasn't a question. June could only nod, his body trembling with fresh terror. She moved fast. She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulled him deeper into the shop, behind a large stack of crates. "Stay there. Don't move. Don't make a sound." She walked back to the front just as the door chimed again. 2 Xylosian guards stepped inside, their white armor making them seem too large for the cluttered space. Their helmets scanned the room, emitting soft, pulsing clicks. "Citizen Sumin," one of them said, his voice filtered and cold. "We are tracking a dangerous off-world fugitive. A human male. His biosignature was detected in this sector. Have you seen anyone matching this description?" A hologram flickered to life from the guard's wrist projector. It was an image of June, taken from his tourist visa application. Sumin crossed her arms, leaning against her workbench. She looked completely at ease. Lots of humans come through here. You know that. What's he supposed to have done? That is classified Imperial security, the guard replied. His presence is a contamination, a threat to the world's soul. If you are harboring him, the penalty is severe. June, hidden behind the crates, held his breath. He could feel the guard's presence like a cold spot in the warmth of the shop. He could feel their scanners probing, searching. He felt a sudden, desperate urge to reach out, to push back against that searching energy. He didn't know how, but he focused on it, on the feeling of the shop, of Sumin's defiant presence, of the humming machinery. He pushed a silent, frantic plea into the air. Not here. You don't see me. The lights in the shop flickered. Not a lot, just a brief dimming and brightening. The guard's scanner emitted a sharp, confused beep. Sumin didn't even flinch. She glanced up at the lights. See? The power grid in this sector is a mess. You should tell your bosses to fix that instead of harassing honest business owners. She gestured around her cluttered shop. Does it look like I'm hiding a dangerous fugitive in here? I've got work to do. The lead guard looked at his scanner, then around the shop. The scan had momentarily glitched. The biosignature had faded. He looked at Sumin's stubborn face. With a curt nod, he said, "Remain vigilant. Report any sighting immediately." The guards turned and left, the door chiming behind them. The red light from their skimmers moved away from the window. June slumped against the crates, his legs giving way. He felt drained, as if he had just run a marathon. Sumin waited a full minute, watching the street before she came back to him. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. The wailing alarm outside had stopped. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice low and serious. June looked up at her, his eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "I drank from a fountain," he said, the truth sounding absurd even to him. Sumin was silent for a long moment. Then a slow understanding dawned in her eyes. "The font of origin? You've got to be kidding me." She let out a low whistle. "You didn't just break a rule, did you?" June shook his head. "The planet. It talks to me. Its name is Kalen. It says I'm a regent." Sumin stared at him. She was a practical woman. She fixed things she could see and touch. This was beyond anything she had ever dealt with. But she had seen the Imperial Guards panic. She had seen the way the lights had flickered at just the right moment. She had seen the raw, genuine terror in June's eyes. She sighed, a long, weary sound. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. You're in a world of trouble, June, but you came to the right place." She offered him a hand and pulled him to his feet. "My name is Sumin. Let's figure out how to fix this." The back room of Sumin's shop was a chaotic mix of living space and storage. A small cot was pushed against a wall, buried under stacks of technical manuals. A hot plate sat next to a box of plasma coils. It was a nest, the home of someone who lived for their work. Sumin cleared a space on a worn couch and pushed a cup of hot, bitter tea into June's hands. "Drink. You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. June's hands were still shaking, making the tea ripple in the cup. "A ghost would be easier," he mumbled. He took a sip. The familiar earthy taste was a small anchor in a reality that had completely spun out of control. "Okay," Sumin said, pulling up a stool and sitting opposite him. "Start from the beginning. And don't leave anything out," so June told her. He told her about the tour, the beautiful fountain, the warning, and the stupid, impulsive thirst that made him take a sip. He told her about the voice in his head, the planetary consciousness named Kalen. He explained the bond, the title of regent, and the fact that the Xylosian guard saw him not as a criminal but as a contamination. Throughout it all, Sumin listened quietly, her sharp eyes fixed on him. She didn't interrupt, didn't laugh. When he finished, she leaned back, crossing her arms. "A planetary soul," she repeated slowly. "And you're its temporary caretaker." She shook her head, a look of grudging amazement on her face. "You tourists really know how to make a mess, don't you?" "It wasn't a vacation choice," June said, a flash of frustration cutting through his fear. I know," Sumin said, holding up a hand. "But this is big." "Bigger than you. The guard doesn't mobilize like that for a simple trespass. They're scared." She pointed a greasy finger at his head. "They're scared of whatever you've got in there." "She is correct," Kalen's voice murmured, making June flinch. The stability of their empire is tied to the control of the regent bond. An outsider, especially a human, is their worst fear realized. June relayed the message to Su-min. She nodded, thinking, "So we can't just put you on a ship and send you home. The bond breaks, bad things happen. We can't turn you in because they'll probably, well, I don't know what they'll do, but it won't be good." She stood up and started pacing the small room. "Which means we have to solve the problem here. You said this bond makes you a key? A key to what?" "To my heart. The true source of my being, a place the Xylosians call the heart of the world." "The heart of the world," June said. Su-min stopped pacing. "I've heard that name. In old texts, black market data fragments. It's not a legend. It's real. It's supposed to be deep, somewhere under the palace." She looked at June, a new intensity in her eyes. "That's where we have to go. That's where you can either learn to control this, or find a way to give it back." The idea was insane. Go deeper into the most heavily guarded place on the planet? It was a suicide mission. "It's impossible," June said. "Staying here is impossible," Su-min countered. "They'll find you. Your only chance is to do the one thing they would never expect. You have to become the regent for real. You have to own it." She gestured to the door. "And I know a way down. The underlevels I use for scavenging parts, they go deep. Deeper than the Xylosians probably remember." June looked at her. This stubborn, practical woman who had every reason to throw him out, but was instead planning a descent into the planet's core. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Su-min shrugged. "Because they told us not to touch the water, and I never liked being told what to do." A faint smile touched her lips. "Also, if you really are connected to this whole world, you're the most important customer I've ever had. It's good for business." It wasn't the whole truth, June could tell. There was a spark in her eyes. The same spark he saw in engineers back home when faced with a problem no one else could solve. This was the ultimate repair job. An hour later, they were ready. Su-min had packed a bag with tools, glow rods, and some concentrated food packs. She led June not out the front door, but through a hidden hatch in the floor of her shop, down into the true depths of the Undercity. The world changed as they descended. The neat gray service corridors gave way to rough-hewn tunnels. The air grew cooler and carried a damp mineral smell. The hum of machinery was replaced by deeper, slower sounds, the groan of rock, the distant rush of water. The light from their glow rods cast long, dancing shadows on walls covered in strange, crystalline growths. This was no longer the city's machine room. This was the planet's body. "You are close." Kalen's voice was stronger here, clearer. It was no longer a whisper in his mind, but a conversation. "I can feel you walking upon my skin." As they walked, Kalen began to teach June. It wasn't with words, but with feelings. When they came to a tunnel blocked by a recent rockfall, Kalen didn't tell him what to do. Instead, June felt a pull, a sense of the rock's structure, its weaknesses. He placed his hands on the stone, not with force, but with focus. He felt the deep, slow patience of the planet, and he encouraged it. With a soft grinding sound, the rocks shifted, not exploding, but gently rearranging, creating a narrow passage. Su-min watched, her eyes wide. "Okay," she said. "That's new." Later, they reached a chasm, bridged only by a few fragile-looking crystalline structures. A hot, sulfurous steam rose from the darkness below. "The path is unstable," Kalen warned. June looked at the bridge. He could feel its age, its brittleness, but he could also feel the energy flowing through it, a faint silvery thread. He didn't see a bridge. He saw a circuit, a failing one. With his engineer's mind, he focused on that thread. He didn't try to rebuild it with brute force. He imagined reinforcing it, tracing the energy path, strengthening the connection. The crystals under their feet glowed a little brighter, growing more solid, locking together with a soft chime. "Go now," June said, his voice tight with concentration. Su-min didn't hesitate. She crossed quickly and June followed, the crystals firm beneath his feet. When he reached the other side, he let go of the focus and the bridge returned to its fragile state. He looked at his hands, then at Su-min. A slow smile spread across his face. For the first time, the bond didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a tool. It felt like understanding. "You're not just listening to it, are you?" Su-min said, her voice filled with awe. "You're talking back," June nodded. "They see it as magic, as something to worship. But it's a system, a complex living system, and I can see how it works." This was the difference. A Zalosian regent would have prayed for safe passage. June, the human engineer, had performed maintenance. They journeyed for hours, descending further than June thought possible. The air grew warm and thick. The tunnels began to glow with their own internal light, a soft pulsing green from the mosses and fungi that clung to the walls. They could hear the thunder of a great underground river. Finally, the tunnel opened up into a space so vast their glow rods couldn't illuminate the ceiling. The air hummed with a power that was both immense and gentle. In the center of the cavern, rising from a still black lake, was a mountain of pure glowing crystal. It pulsed with a light that was the same silver blue as the fountain's water, but infinitely brighter. Veins of gold and amethyst light ran through it like lightning frozen in stone. This was not a machine. This was a heart. "You have arrived," Kalen said, and the voice was everywhere. In the air, in the water, in the light. "This is me, my core, myself." June and Sumin stood at the shore of the lake, small and silent. They had reached the end of their journey. They had found the heart of the world. And as they stood there feeling the immense living power of the place, they both knew one thing for certain. They were no longer alone, and they were no longer hidden. Their arrival had been noticed. The light from the heart of the world did not just illuminate the cavern. It filled it, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the planet itself. June stood at the edge of the black lake, his small human form dwarfed by the mountain of living crystal. He could feel the power here. It was the same energy he had felt in the fountain, but now it was an ocean and he was a single drop. The connection was so intense it was almost painful, a flood of sensation and information that threatened to overwhelm him. Sumin stood beside him, her usual tough expression replaced by one of pure wonder. "So this is it," she whispered, her voice swallowed by the vast space. The engine room. For a long moment there was only the hum and the light. Then a new sound echoed through the cavern. It was the sharp, precise sound of armored footsteps on stone. From a tunnel entrance across the lake, figures emerged. A squad of Zylosian Imperial Guards, their white armor reflecting the crystal's glow, making them look like ghosts. And at their head was a Zylosian unlike any June had seen. He was taller, his opalescent skin marked with fine, dark lines like cracks in marble. His eyes held no serenity, only a cold, hard fury. This was General Vorlak. "You." Vorlak's voice cut through the hum, sharp and contemptuous. "The Defiler. You have led us on a tedious chase, but it ends here, in the one place you should never have been able to reach." The guards fanned out, their weapons humming to life, casting a harsh, red light that clashed with the soft blue of the heart. Sumin stepped in front of June, her hands raised. "Wait, he didn't mean any of this. It was an accident." Vorlak ignored her, his gaze fixed on June. "An accident that has polluted the sacred bond. The Regent is the voice of our world, a title passed through the Imperial line. It is not for some primitive stumbled upon by chance. You are a sickness in the heart of Kalon, and we are here to cut you out." June's fear was a cold stone in his gut, but beneath the fear something else was growing. A sense of rightness. This was his connection as much as theirs. He had felt the planet's approval as he navigated its depths. He had fixed its broken paths. He speaks from fear. Kalen's voice was calm in his mind. "Fear of change. Fear of you. Show him he is wrong." "How?" June thought, desperate. "They have weapons. I have feelings. You have me. Speak. I will listen." Vorlak took a step forward. "Seize him." As two guards moved toward them, June did the only thing he could think of. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't run. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, not to fight but to connect. He pushed his awareness into the heart of the world. He thought not of power but of truth. He thought of his simple thirst at the fountain. He thought of his journey down here with Sumin, of fixing the bridge, of moving the rocks. He thought of the wonder he felt, not the greed. He showed the planet, and through the planet he showed everyone. His voice, when it came, was not his own. It was amplified by the energy of the heart, echoing through the cavern and beyond, carried on the psychic network that connected every Zylosian to their world. It was a quiet voice, but it was everywhere at once. "I did not come to steal." June's voice echoed in the minds of every being in the cavern, and in the minds of every citizen in the city above. In the Imperial Palace, the old Empress looked up from her throne, her eyes wide. "I was thirsty. I was curious. I made a mistake. But the bond was made. Kalen accepted me. He opened his eyes and they were glowing with the same soft light as the heart. He looked at Vorlak. You call me a sickness, but I have done nothing but care for this world since I arrived. I have listened to it. I have fixed what was broken. Is that a sickness, or is it just a different way? To demonstrate, he turned from the general and faced the lake. He focused on the water, on the life within it. He encouraged it, just as he had encouraged the rocks. From the dark water, beautiful glowing flowers began to bloom, spreading across the surface like a field of stars. It was a gesture of creation, not destruction. Vorlak stared, his cold confidence cracking. Tricks, defilement. But his own guards were hesitating. They could feel it too. The world soul was not recoiling from the human. It was embracing him. The energy in the cavern felt warmer, brighter, more alive than it had in centuries. Then a new voice joined the chorus in their minds. It was ancient and tired, but full of authority. It was the Empress.
General Vorlak.
Stand down. Vorlak whirled around as if she were there in the cavern. My Empress. He is an off-world contaminant. He is the regent, the Empress's voice replied, firm and clear. The heart has shown us. It does not fear him. It has changed for him. It has been a long time since Kalen has shown us something new. The guards lowered their weapons. The fight was over without a single shot being fired. Vorlak stood rigid, his fists clenched, defeated not by force, but by the will of his own world and his Empress. The Empress's voice spoke directly to June now. Human, you have done what none of my line have done in 1,000 cycles. You have not just listened to Kalen. You have conversed with it. You have inspired it. The bond is true. The title of regent is yours. June felt the weight of the offer. He could stay. He could rule. He could be the most powerful human in the galaxy. He looked at Su Min, who gave him a small, nervous nod. He looked at the defeated general and at the glowing heart of the world, and he knew what he had to do. I don't want it, June said, his voice his own again, but still heard by all. A world should be led by its own children, not by a tourist who got lucky. A wave of shock and then respect flowed from the Empress. Then what will you do? The bond cannot be broken. It can be transferred, June said, an idea forming in his mind, a final piece of engineering, but not in the old way. The connection is different now. It has a human spark. I can create a new interface. A bridge. Su Min, can you help me? Su Min, understanding immediately, rushed forward with her toolkit, working together, using pieces of spare crystal from the cavern and components from Su Min's bag. They built a small, intricate device. June didn't know the Xylosian rituals, so he used what he knew, circuits and conduits. He wove his own connection to Kalen into the device, not severing it but channeling it. When it was finished, he held it in his hands. It glowed with a soft, steady light. The bond is stable, he said to the Empress. I am passing the stewardship back to you. But a part of me, a part of humanity will remain with Kalen. A reminder to listen, not just command. To create, not just preserve. He activated the device. A beam of silver-blue light shot from the heart and connected with the device in his hands. He felt the immense pressure of the bond lessen, the constant voice of Kalen receding from the forefront of his mind to a warm, distant presence in the background. He was free. The Empress, in her palace above, felt the connection settle into her, stronger and more vibrant than it had been in years. She felt the new, curious energy within it, the human spark. June handed the device to a stunned Xylosian guard. Take this to your Empress. The regent has returned. Weeks later, June and Su Min stood on a landing platform watching a human starship being prepared for departure. The sun was rising over Xylos Prime, painting the crystalline city in shades of orange and pink. He was no longer a fugitive. He was an honorary citizen, the first human to have been the soul of an alien world. You could have stayed, Su Min said, her hands in her pockets. You were basically the king. June smiled, a real easy smile for the first time in a long time. I'm an engineer. I fix things. I don't run them. He looked at the city. Besides, I left a piece of my work behind. That's enough. He could still feel Kalen if he concentrated, not as a voice but as a feeling. A friend, living in a world of crystal and light, a world that was now forever linked to his own. Su Min nodded toward the ship. You ready to go home? June took one last look at the sunrise over the alien city. He was just a man from Busan again. But he was also the man who had drunk from a fountain and for a little while held the soul of a world in his hands. And he knew as he walked towards the ship that Earth's place in the galaxy would never be the same again.